Welcome back to the Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Edwin Porras, Doctor of Physical Therapy, Medical Analyst, FantasyPoints.com. Gracias por tus oídos. Hey, today we're going to go over a real quick episode just on Mike Evans, George Kittle. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, the Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast. We are here as consistently as possible, and I think I can address it because I have a couple of minutes here before I get started. Occasionally, you've noticed the podcast is consistent and inconsistent. And I have to give a big shout out to my compadre, Jorge George Martin, who still is editing the podcast and helping a lot of the back end stuff. Big shout out to him because he has been the reason this podcast continues to exist. For those of you who know, have been following for a long time and been following me along in general, you know that this year I opened a clinic. I started a business, and that has been one of the most challenging things I've ever taken on. So that is why at times the podcast is not here. On top of the responsibilities that I'm trying to keep up at Fantasy Points, right? So at fantasypoints.com, you'll always get the most comprehensive thing. I always have the entire review and preview every week. That I haven't missed at. But occasionally, this podcast will fall through the cracks. My day will get away from me. I'm working, 50, 60-hour weeks at times. It gets to be a lot. Not making excuses. I love it. This is a life that I chose. But that is why I haven't been as present online this year. That is why at times you'll see that this podcast gets missed. I apologize. I'm going to continue to pump out the content this year, the rest of this year through the playoffs. I'm going to do my best to be as online and as present as possible answering questions. But you deserve to know, especially the OGs who've been sticking around, who've been with me since we started this back in 19 or 2020, whatever it was. So just wanted to give that explanation. By the way, Pro Athlete Physical Therapy in Denver, Colorado, if you need some physical therapy. So we'll move on now. Enough of that. Mike Evans. Coming back from the hamstring strain. Mike Evans is in his 30s. Tough to say because I'm in my 30s. And once you get to be in your 30s, your body just naturally doesn't bounce back as quickly from things like hamstring strains. Now, we know that the Bucs took their time with Mike Evans. He is expected to play at this point based on what I've seen, what I've read. He's still volatile, right? You're going to have to slide him in, especially with this bye weeks, this mini bye-pocalypse that we're having right now. You're going to have to slide Mike Evans into your lineup. I would not use him as much in cash lineups. He's going to be boom or bust, and realistically, given his age, given the fact that he's dealt with this for his entire career almost, he is highly volatile this week. You just got to wait and see in most leagues. If you've got like an 8-person league, maybe even 10, probably not 10 given the bye weeks this week, you can look elsewhere, but everybody else, you're going to have to slide him in there. George Kittle. And, George Kittle's coming back from this hamstring issue, likely to play. And, given the quarterback situation, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen there. We don't know how Shanahan's going to handle that, what the offense is going to look like. But George Kittle is George Kittle. And the reality is that with tight ends, like I've mentioned time after time after time, you're either going to get 3 to 5 points plus a touchdown or 3 to 5 points. You might as well throw in some touchdown luck. Start George Kittle. If he's active, make sure that he is active. If you want to know more about Malik Neighbors, when's Brock Purdy coming back, what's the deal with Alexander Madison, what's the deal with Zamir White, what to do there, make sure you go to fantasypoints.com, check out the full Week 12 injury preview. Until then, good luck the rest of the way.